Good morning. Welcome to your Monday morning, early morning intuitive guidance. I am having a heck of a time remembering it's Monday. Monday. Think I got it now. I'm Dr. Bonnie Nussbaum, America's kick-ass coach and psychologist, here with some words to get us thinking about some things, making some changes to our lives, improving our existence. So we'll wait and see who pops on here this morning, but we are actually going to be doing a section out of Good Morning Lucy. Welcome. Looks like someone else has popped on also. Glad you are here. We're going to be doing a section out of Taking the War Out of Our Words. So if you have the book and you want to go dig it out, feel free. Good morning, Peggy. Welcome. Glad you are here. Thank you for the sunshine, Lucy. We're not going to be seeing any of that today. It's actually supposed to be rainy from about 10 o'clock this morning on. So I think today will be indoor activity day. We'll see what we can come up with. So I just wanted to also trot out for everybody the name for our prized chicken that I showed you yesterday, the one that is as large as a basketball. Good morning, Carolyn. Welcome. I solicited name responses and it just popped popped into my head that it would be fun to run together all of the names that all of you contributed and see what we end up with. Good morning, Gwen. Glad you are here. And it kind of ends up being like when your mama used to yell at all of you in sequential order, trying to figure out which kid she was mad at. Good morning, Diane. Glad you are here. So at my household, it sounded like Bonnie, Carrie, Marty. So that's kind of how the chicken's name ended up. It is Rhodey, Chuck Cluck, Chicky Dude, Dudley Hal. That is him. So there we go. So today we are starting with another part of Taking the War Out of Our Words. Good morning, Cindy. Glad you are here. The Art of Powerful Non-Defensive Communication by Sharon Ellison. And look how far we've come. We are approaching the end of the book, which is good. And I like weaving a little bit of it in here and there. Good morning, Mel, because it gives some time in between to practice with it, to work on it. Because again, a lot of this is not stuff that comes second nature to us. It isn't how we've been trained. So we need to practice. So we are going to be on page 201, and the section is entitled Avoiding Bargaining After the Consequence is Implemented. And I will guarantee you every single one of us has done that, has shot ourselves in the foot basically, because we make the consequence. They engage in the behavior that requires the consequence. We wheedle and bargain and adjust, and they do the same thing. And there's an example in here from her daughter, and I'll give you an example from my daughter, that that if we back off at that point, we really have undone the power of our consequence. Good morning, Pat. Welcome. Glad you are here. So, avoiding bargaining after the consequence is implemented. Again, we've laid out what we're going to do if certain things occur. Those certain things have occurred. We need to follow through. Once a person has decided how to respond to our prediction, either behaviorally or by telling us, the point of no return has been reached, and we implement the consequence. If the person changes the decision or promises to change the behavior at that point, it is too late to eliminate the consequence without breaking both our promise and our commitment to ourselves. Let that sink in for a bit. If we waffle right there, which most of us have done, in fact, I'm going to say all of us have done, we undo our commitment to ourselves. We're not showing up for us, and we're not showing up for the other person either. So here's her example. From time to time, my daughter Amy did her part to uphold the reputation of the terrible twos, which to my way of thinking was part of her learning to discriminate between when it made sense to exert her will at full volume and when it did not. I would tell her that she would have to go to her room if she kept throwing a tantrum. Sometimes she would continue until I said, I would like for you to go to your room now. At which point she would stop crying instantly and say, I'll quit, Mommy. I don't have to go to my room. The problem was that she didn't stop her tantrum until after I asked her to go to her room. Had I not followed through on sending her to her room at that point, she would have succeeded in dismantling the consequence, which would have increased the likelihood that she would throw another tantrum soon. So there's the reason why you want to follow through. Even though it looks kind of innocuous, if you don't follow through, you are sentencing yourself to more of that same behavior. Is that really what you want to do? Is that really what you want to do? Instead of discussing whether or not she had to go to her room, I simply added another consequence. If you don't go to your room now, then I will take you. This is a 2-year-old. We can do that. She would walk to her room, often screaming all the way. Just through the doorway, she would make a U-turn, stop screaming, come back out and say, "I won't fuss anymore, Mommy." Having followed through on the consequence, even though it may have only lasted a few seconds, I dramatically reduced the odds that she would soon repeat the tantrum. Okay? And my rule of thumb was, for the timeout thing, it was 1 minute for every year of their life. So for that child, it would have been a 2-minute stay. Good morning, Barb. Glad you are here. We are working on taking the war out of our words, and that habit that we have of undoing our own consequences, which really makes our lives more difficult. So I make it clear in advance that once I start a consequence, it is too late for the other person to change course and make a different choice before experiencing the consequence. If you make a prediction without such a clarification and encounter the issue, you can just say something like, "I already said I want you to go to your room, so I want you to do that first before you tell me you are ready to stop screaming." Frequently, a child will revert to a high-volume protest at this point, demonstrating that the statement about not needing to go was an effort to take control over the consequence, rather than to return to respectful interaction. Again, it's part of the game they play. It's part of the game we as adults play. So there's more examples in here, which I think will be helpful. And I'll give you my example from working with my daughter. Good morning, Deb. Glad you are here. The same principle, here it is, applies to adult relationships. Perhaps your partner persists in giving directions after you have predicted you will drive in the other car the next time this happens. Your partner says, "Oops, I forgot. Sorry, I won't do it again. You don't need to drive the other car tomorrow." It is too late to stop the consequences because the changed behavior came after the consequence was activated. Just as with a child, if we maintain the consequence we predicted, our partner is likely to exhibit a sudden bad mood. No kidding. "Well, if you're going to be so picky, I give up. I said I wouldn't do it again. I think you just enjoy controlling me." There's that verbiage. Again, follow through. The next day you would take your own car, and they'll continue probably to complain and protest. But the behavior of telling you how to drive is likely to drop off dramatically when you follow through. Again, on the front end, it may not seem like it's such a big, hairy deal, but it is. It is. So the next section is called Maintaining Firmness in the Face of an Intimidating Response. And oftentimes people would say, if I was working on this kind of thing with a client, oftentimes they would say, it's just not worth getting into a fight with them. It is worth getting into a fight with him because you are setting the stage for future behavior and for oftentimes the outcome of that relationship. So let's keep going. Maintaining firmness in the face of an intimidating response. Sometimes it's hard to follow through on a predicted consequence if the other person initially intensifies in resisting any of the choices available under the terms of our prediction. This commonly happens because we so often apply predictions to situations in which we have previously accepted rude or non-reciprocal behavior. The other person may not initially welcome the change and may, in fact, hate it. For example, we've got the kid, Beth, who was told to do the dishes or she couldn't go to the dance by her mom, Corey. So here we go. For example, Beth would not initially want to do the dishes, nor would she want to miss any of the party. Jake would not want to have to remember financial details, nor would he want Sandra to stop keeping the books. Intense resistance or anger can be intimidating, so much so that we may back down and return to coaxing, arguing, and making idle threats, instead of continuing to follow through on our clear predictions. So again, do what you can, anything you can, to follow through on those predictions. Oftentimes it only takes once to get the behavior to change. Hello, Beth, glad you are here. It was initially very hard for Corey not to argue with Beth or give in when Beth protested. It's not fair that I have to do the dishes before going to Jane's party. In a situation like this, if you find it difficult simply to respond to the argument with silence, you may make a transition statement that respects the person's freedom to choose. I have made myself clear. What you choose to do is completely up to you. End of conversation. Sometimes a person threatens to make the opposite choice from the one she thinks we want her to make. Beth might say, fine, I'll just leave the dishes to rot and stay home and listen to my music. I didn't really want to go anyway. It can be very easy to get hooked into a power struggle at this point, perhaps slipping into an encouraging statement such as, it will just take a few minutes. If you do them now, you can go and you won't even be late. Cajoling, trying to get them to do what we want them to do. And again, that's exactly what we wanted to avoid here, is not getting into that power struggle. Rather than getting caught in this way, reiterating a simple statement of the person's freedom to choose can help us stay out of the power struggle. It's your choice. Enough said. We then need to disengage from further conversation and leave the room if necessary. If we have to say something, simply acknowledge the person's freedom to choose once or twice at the most and in a neutral tone. Otherwise, you're slipping back into engaging in the behavior again. Can help us make sure we implement the consequence. As you become more comfortable and the other person adjusts to the change, I recommend that you say as little as possible. They know. They're just trying to hook you, trying to engage. We can follow through just as meticulously when dealing with other adults about household responsibilities, although the consequences may be different. If your partner leaves personal items strewn around the living room and says you're obsessed with neatness, you may feel stuck with between living with it or picking it up yourself. However, there are many consequences you might predict. Some of them take a bit of effort on your part, but not so much as the stress around constant argument or doing it yourself. You might say, if you do not keep your personal items out of the living room, then I will put them in a box in the garage when I pick up rather than putting them away for you. They can go to the garage and get their stuff. I did that with my kids with their book bags and their shoes, which all ended right at the back door. So they went in a box and went in the basement. Mom, where's my homework? Probably in the box in the basement. Then they had to truck down there and get their stuff. Adults who live with messy housemates have found a variation of the box prediction to be effective. If the housemate does not respond to intermediate steps, a person may predict, if you do not wash your dishes after using them, I will designate certain pots, pans, dishes, and silverware to be yours and not give you permission to use mine. And second prediction, if you don't wash those, I will just put them in a dishpan in the garage so we don't have to deal with the mess. You can wash them whenever you need them. The person may be a great housemate in other ways, but issues such as messy kitchens often ruin living arrangements. There's a saw that goes around in the psychotherapy world, which is they got divorced over the toothpaste. The idea being one of them leaving the cap off the toothpaste, over time, it's like water eroding a rock. Drip, drip, drip. A relationship can be destroyed by the cap being left off the toothpaste. Drip, drip, drip. And it's representative. There's probably other things that are eroding the relationship also. And if we don't, I always tell people, err on the side of feeling petty. Speak up at the point where it still feels petty before it gets to be this monolithic thing. My mom would throw our jackets and boots outside. She raised 9 kids. Absolutely. You cannot afford to tolerate those little drip, drip, drips. because it will erode the functioning of the household. So instead of fussing and fuming, you can do something rather simple about it. Once again, since adults are not used to having consciously predicted consequences for their inconsiderate behavior, the initial reaction may not be pleasant. I encourage adults who are beginning to set more constructive boundaries with each other to remember what usually happens when we begin to set boundaries with an unruly child. First a tantrum, then a happier, more pleasant person. So I'll give you my example from my daughter. She was at that point where they were poking a whole lot of holes in their ears and they were piercing their noses and all the tongues, all kinds of stuff. And I said to her, after she had a fair array of holes in her ears, at 16, she wanted to get her belly button pierced. And I said, nope, I'm done with the holes. When you turn 18, you can poke as many holes in your body as you want. It's your body, you can do what you want. At 16, if I'm setting a boundary, no more holes in your body. If you choose to violate that boundary, that tells me that you're not mature enough to make good decisions, and I'm not giving you the car for the summer. You don't get the car for the summer if you choose to violate the boundary I've just set about piercing your belly button. So, at that point, she and her father decided that they were going to go do that on their own. We were divorced for her birthday and sneak around and keep it secret and all that stuff. So her birthday party arrives. Friends are coming in. One friend comes in and says, show me your belly button ring. And Lauren goes, shh. And I said, show me your belly button ring. So she does. And I said, and give me the car keys. Mom, no, Mom, I'll take it out. No. There's that thing. Taking it out doesn't resolve the issue. The issue was, I laid the ground rule out. You chose to violate it anyway. Now you need to experience the consequence. So she gave me the car keys. She was without the car for the whole summer. The next day, her father calls me and says, aren't you being a little hard on her? And I said, no. And you, the adult, knew what the consequence was going to be, as did she. And you were complicit with that sneaking around behind my back to do things. If you want to buy her a car and pay the insurance, knock yourself out. So she didn't get the car for the summer. She rode her bike everywhere. Or she had to have people come pick her up. Whatever. Not my problem. You made the choice. I was one of those pain in the ass mothers. But she's turned out really well. The next section is implementing the consequence thoroughly. When Corey predicts that Beth will not have permission to go to the party until the dishes are done, she must not give permission until Corey has thoroughly and completely finished her task. Beth must not leave anything, such as the pans, for later to wipe the counters properly. If we apply the same exacting evaluation to task-related consequences for coworkers and other adults, I think we would live in a more productive world of competent people. Yes, there are those people who try to short the job, okay? So if we say, you need to do the dishes before you can go to whatever it is, and they do everything but wipe out the sink, wipe off the countertop, they know the drill. They know what you expect. They've watched you do dishes for how long? So then I would go and check. Okay, looks pretty good. The dishes look fine. Now the sink needs to be cleaned. The counters need to be wiped off. Table needs to be wiped. Mom, really? Yes, really. That is the job of doing dishes. Finish it till the end. I'll come back and check when you're done. It's just how it needs to be. Those people who short things at work, they do part of the job but not all the job. Well, I did these 5 parts. Can you do the last one? Nope, I would like you to finish that last one. Good morning, Linda. Welcome. I'd like you to finish that last one because it is part of the job. If they don't, the consequence gets handed out. So here's the last segment we're going to do for today. Implementing the consequence consistently. And what I have often told people is do not make a prediction that you are not willing to follow through on every single time. And again, my thing is, for the most part, once you follow through a couple of times, they will get it, that you're not going to back off, that you're not going to, and periodically they may test it again. I have my vending machine analogy. You are the vending machine. They come up to you, they put their money in, they push the button, they expect a specific response. They come up to you, they put their money in, they push a button, they expect a specific response. What happens when you make the change? They come up, they put their money in, they push the button, nothing happens. They push the button, nothing happens. They bang on the button, nothing happens. They hit the coin return, they wiggle the machine. They're escalating their behavior to try to get the old response out of you. You cannot afford to give that old response. So if you feel yourself slipping, go lock yourself in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Whatever you got to do to not fall back into the old behavior, which in this case is going back on what you've predicted. We must stick with the prediction. So here's what she says. Following through consistently means each and every time a consequence is called for. As vital as consistency is, for most of us it is very difficult. Suppose, for example, you have told your partner you will not continue a conversation if he argues with you. If he then brings up a point in his argument the next day, you may automatically respond, instead of refusing to engage in the argument. In order to be consistent, you might reiterate the prediction. If you want to argue, I am still unwilling to discuss this issue. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Although you could also simply not answer, people often react more angrily to dead silence than to another prediction. I usually recommend restating the prediction the first 2 times someone attempts to restart the argument. After that, I would just implement the consequence with no discussion. So here are the points. Here are the things, the guidelines for implementing a predicted consequence. 1, respond in a timely manner. Don't wait 2 days before you finally hand out the consequence. As close to the consequence to behavior as you can possibly hand it out, hand it out. Respond without discussion. Just hand out the consequence. So for my daughter's case, it was saying, hand me the car keys. Saying as little as possible, not you did this, look what you did, blah, 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 I'm so upset. Hand me the car keys. She knows all that other stuff. I don't need to repeat that. Hand me the car keys. Avoid bargaining after implementing the consequence. That would have been the, yes, take it out and clean that hole up and then, then we'll talk about having the car. No, I made the prediction. If you choose to get your belly button pierced, you do not get the car for the summer. Done deal. Maintain firmness if the person's initial response is intimidating, and as pragmatic as you can be about it. No, we discussed this. I said X, you engaged in Y, here's the consequence. No, end of discussion. There's nothing to talk about. Follow through thoroughly and consistently. Again, especially with kids, but sometimes with adults too. If you have some passive-aggressive people in your life, they will do what is called for half-assed. And okay, thank you for your efforts. I still need you to do X, Y, and Z for the job to be complete or for the job to be done to my satisfaction, etc. And again, they may complain, they may escalate, whatever. Merely hand out the consequence, all right? And I know this stuff isn't easy. I'm pretty bullheaded and stubborn. So for me, and having been trained as a psychologist, we practice this stuff all the time. So it got to be very second nature. Practice, practice, practice. Stick with it. Do not violate your own boundaries, all right? This is you showing up for you. And it's so important, and it's so powerful, and it so will change the trajectory of your life. Have an awesome day. We'll see you again tomorrow. Remember, you're capable of far more than you think you are. And thank you to all of you who took advantage of my birthday coaching special and my one-shot deal 12-session coaching special. I'm looking forward to working with you. And again, the next time anything's on special will be Black Friday. So see you in November. See you tomorrow, actually. Bye-bye.